Hello, and welcome to Brett Irick's presentation on a Mexican typeset from 1537 to date. Okay, then the visuals are ready to go. We can indeed hear you, so we can go ahead and start the presentation, and if your camera decides to work in the middle, then great. But
okay,
you're welcome to take it away and just let me know when to advance the slide, and I will do that when you tell me to.
Put the PowerPoint up.
Yep, it is up. We are on the title slide.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me to this first educational symposium. We're going to talk about collecting Mexican coins, which is a very underappreciated area in United States numismatics. And there's a lot of good opportunities there, but it's also historically something that was used very heavily throughout North America and the rest of the world because there is simply so much of it. Next slide. Yeah, I'm running, so we should be on slide 2. Mexico first started coinage in 1536 on a royal decree because there was simply so much silver and a little bit of gold coming out of the country that ultimately Spain wanted to control or try to control how it got exported to the rest of the world. And also important, one of the key forms of taxation was the king got one piece, the person that mined the stuff got the other 4 pieces. It was 20% tax. They did start striking copper or bronze, silver and gold. The locals didn't like the coppers, so those are very hard to find. Silver is the most common, and gold, somewhat less common. Unlike what we think, the Spanish milled dollar, which is 8 reals, they only made about 3 of that we know about. It was more common to have smaller coins because that's what they had the technology to hammer out on an anvil. Next slide. So this 8 real coin, which is worth a US dollar, is not a beginner type coin. Usually these things run a fair bit over $500,000. However, this next slide shows an early 4 real coin, which is a $50 equivalent. These are very affordable and available in pretty decent condition. You try not to get something that was sea salvaged, and it's a good alternative to the $500,000 coin starting at a little over $100, and you can get a really nice one for under $500. This particular example was produced under Rodriguez in the period 1547 to 1553. We don't know exactly when, but to the left side of the shield at 3 o'clock on the second picture in this frame, you'll see his letter L. And then on the left side, you'll see the Mexico City mint mark at the time with an M. It doesn't have an O over the top of it. Eventually, they added the O because the mint in Madrid, Spain was concerned that the Mexico mint operation might contaminate the coins produced in Spain and cause the assayer there to go to the gallows. So unlike almost any other country other than the Spanish colonial area, the assayer had to put his mark on the coins so they knew who to hang if there wasn't enough good metal on it. Next slide. And then we get into the subject of cob coinage. And it's, we would call that rougher than a cob if you were using the old-fashioned outbuilding. But because they wanted the silver coin and export as soon as possible to pay debt and do various other things, they abandoned trying to make a round coin that was nice looking, except for a few royal presentation pieces. They made the planchets by from cutting cast metal bars and using an axe. Surprisingly, the guys that were using the axe to cut off the coin blanks were pretty accurate in what they were doing, and the weight, the confirmation, the weight specification still remained the same. And then these were made from the late 1500s until milled coins, or coins made on somewhat modern minting equipment at the time, started in the 1730s, 1732 to be exact. Next slide. So this is an example of a cob. You can buy the more common ones for a few $100s. This one just happens to be particularly rare because on the upper right of the left image, you will see the full date 1704-1704. And now you see the revised mint mark M with an O on top of it. This particular coin is from the era of 1704 to 1710, in which even the dateless cobs are extremely rare. This is the only one noted for that entire period with a full date, and was purchased during a Mexican coin convention in a charity auction. And I sincerely thank the donor. It's a very cherished piece. It's not sea salvaged, and yes, somebody has dipped it, but it's apparent almost uncirculated. So this type of coinage continued until this little device showed up based on another royal decree, because people were using files and other things to shave metal off of coins. And the cobs were kind of hard to stack. In fact, they wouldn't, you had to weigh them. So now we have this. What they would do is run the ingots through a rolling mill to the correct thickness. They'd punch out round coins, they'd put an edge on them, and then they'd run it through a screw press like this, which continued to be used at most of the mints in Mexico until the late 1800s. You know, labor was inexpensive in Mexico. But you got to pity the poor guy that had to trust at least one person on the smaller coins and two on the bigger ones, that when he was placing or removing coins from this press, they weren't getting in too big of a hurry, so they could remain nicknamed 10 because they don't lose finger pieces. Today, I think OSHA would call this a flagrant safety violation. The first coin in the red book is a Spanish milled dollar, and the design that's portrayed in that book, which is the next slide, was used until 1771, when the next monarch decided that he needed to get free publicity and put his effigy or image on the shield side of the coin. But again, on the right side frame at 9 o'clock, you can see the Mexico City mint mark and SA or M, which was current at the time. What's interesting is on the left slide is the date of 1757, but the 5 looks upside down, and that's not an error. That's just how the Spanish number 5 looked like. Next slide. So this is one of the vanity coins where the monarch decided to put his image on the coin. Most of these can still be purchased for a few $100s, just like the last coin. It's important if you're putting together a basic typeset. Next slide. And then somewhere in the United States, they had a war for independence that lasted 11 years, started in 1810. It went to 1821. There are a lot of emergency issues of coins, and it's a great area to specialize in. For the first time, mints opened outside of Mexico City because safely getting bullion for coinage to Mexico City was pretty dangerous because it was a very lawless place with a lot of banditos. Again, you might have to spend a few $100s. Next slide. This one's a copper coin. There is a Mexican one in my collection. It's called a Morelius Sud, what you see on the left side. It's dated 1813, and these were made in the southern part of Mexico. And then this production was made in Durango, which is in the north, further to the northwest of Mexico. It's pretty crude looking. Whoever made it didn't really want to feel like they had a 100% chance of going to the gallows for making it. So they left the monarch on the coin. And perhaps it was expediency because they managed to get a hold of a set of real dies. So after their 11 years of decimation, we get this guy named Iturbide, who was very repressive and not well liked by his subjects. They had a failed attempt to start a democracy. The powers that be decided that they wanted a monarchy that didn't last long. You can get these for a few $100s. The suggested types are a half real, which amounts to 6 1/4 cents in the then current money, and go up to a few $100s for a silver example. Gold examples also exist. We'll talk about that a bit later. If you save up your money, you can probably get one of those for under $1,000. It's pretty nice. And they're very rare. So then we have the Mexican Republic, and they started issuing their own non-regal, without monarch effigy coins in 1823. And the new Republic government authorized yet additional mints. I think it expanded to somewhere around 15 or 16 at some point. And most of the coins got exported to pay for import goods. And there was still 20% tax on coinage that was payable to the government, and that was a major way they financed themselves. And with a very couple of minor exceptions, primarily private companies based in Europe that were granted concessions to make coins, they still continue to use the same old screw presses that were human powered. Next. So this artifact that's in my collection is kind of really special. It came out of the collection of Jack Hughes. It is an employee pass for the Casa de Moneda, which means National de Mexico, which means the Mexican National Mint. And it's dated 1823, which puts it in the early Republic period. It still comes in its original leather pouch, which is very finely produced. I haven't been able to find any history about the employee, but it obviously is a proud possession. This is the only pass that exists from the early Republic period for the Mexico City Mint. It's a real prize, and it'll get passed on to somebody very deserving. On the left side, it talks about what the person looks like. So if somebody was new at the entrance to the mint that knew how to read, They could check to see if the employee's characteristics matched the employee, those expected on the left. So then we get into the early Republic coinage. The first design was called a hook neck, which is a side-facing eagle on the reverse, because in Mexican law for the early Republic, the national coat of arms, or eagles and serpent side, is the legally declared obverse. The obverse design was the cap and raise, which is very famous. It continued to be struck up until 1897. Because there's so much metal in the middle of this design, it's very hard to strike it up, and you can usually get a pretty decent one of these for under $800. If you want one that's fully struck up and AU-ish, have your checkbook open. There's a specialty book called Hook Neck, and this is a picture of an AU example in my collection, and you can see on the left slide, or the left picture, that the center detail of the eagle never struck up, even though this is almost uncirculated coin that likely didn't see any circulation or very little. Next slide. With a few exceptions, profile eagle currency or eagle facing was used for most of this period. Much easier to strike up. Millions of coins were produced, most of which are 8 real or $1 sized weight in silver. There's a lot of collectors that specialize in this, and there's hundreds of different date axators, mint marks, and die pairs. And Mike Dunnigan and J.B. Parker wrote a book on the subject called Resplenderes. Next slide. One of the ones I particularly like is if I can find a really nice half real or 6 1/4 cent coin, I buy it because they're only a couple $100 each. This is a fairly rare mint state coin from Guanajuato. It was made in 1841. You can attempt a 5 coin denomination set of this design, which is 1/2, 1, 2, 4, and 8. Why that rationale in the Spanish system? The next denomination was always double the value of the previous. Next slide. The French invaded Mexico in 1861. Took 2 years to get control. And coins there from 1864 to 67 were produced under the authority of Maximilian, an Austrian Archduke. The Republic first started attempting decimalization just before his installation as monarch. It wasn't successful. Maximilian kind of forced matters, but a lot of the remote mints continue to use out-of-date dies because simply they needed to do something with the coinage metal that was being produced in the mines and buy import goods. Maximilian wasn't liked very well. He was right up there at Iturbide, and they captured him and executed him. Yeah, and then the Second Republic of Mexico, for a time, reinstituted most of the earlier coin designs. You know, the best coin here is to try to get one of Maximilian in the 1 peso denomination. They're pretty hard to find, but you can get one for usually around $100 or less. If you want a decent one, you know, you're looking at another 500. But be really careful about buying anything that has Maximilian on it, because there's a lot of fantasy coins and contemporary counterfeits. If you buy it through a reputable dealer or eBay seller, because they don't want their reputations hurt. Next. And this is this is the example. It's in my collection of for Maximilian that was made in 1866. And on the right side picture, you can still see 1866 in the Mexico City net mark. Next slide. They finally decided to try to modernize away from the cap and raise 8 reale coin. This was a beautiful coin that's called balance scale peso, but it was a fail. Even though it was the same weight, they made it slightly smaller in diameter for unknown reasons. And the primary export market in China didn't trust it, so they gave less value in merchandise for these coins, and they went away fairly quickly. Cap and raise came back until 1897. You can get a pretty good one of these for a few $100s. Which then brings us to the Liberty Cap peso. Finally, they were able to evolve away from 8 reals. And these continued in production from 1898 until 1909. And then there are restrikes of the 1898 Mexico City Mint that were made in 1949 at the request of the Republic of China. There was a pitched battle with the Communist Party of China to pay their troops because that was the money they trusted the most. And the restrikes, because Mexico City Mint had limited capacity, were also made in San Francisco. And in the Numismatist, we read that when R.S. Yeoman attended the 1949 ANA convention, he observed the restrikes being made. Sadly, what is now Taiwan surrendered control of the mainland China, and none of the coins made at San Francisco made it to China. They sat in a Bank of America vault for a number of years until they asked to have them melted. I have seen the Mexico City restrikes, which are more common than a real 1898 Mexico City. I have yet to find a real San Francisco Mint coin, and the guess is it is extremely rare. You can get a nice one of these coins in this series. I did say a little, per milk plus about $25. And if you can find an uncirculated coin that's not too bad, it's going to be well over 100. It just depends on where it was made and what year. And good luck trying to put together a set of these because they're so difficult to find even at major national shows and on eBay. Complete date assayer and mint mark set is going to be a 10-year project at least. And this is what that coin looks like. And you can see at the left side, it now says un peso for 1 peso. CN means the Culiacan Mint in northwestern Mexico, 1904. The assayer's initials are MH. And it attests to the fact that it's supposed to be made out of 0.902, 0.7, or just under 90.3% silver. This one's particularly well struck because you can see most of the detail on the rays, but more importantly, on the obverse side or the eagle side, you can even see most of the detail on the serpent, which is the hardest thing to strike up on these coins. That's what you want to look for if you're going to buy one. And yes, it does have a couple minor rim bumps, but that's about as good as it gets without spending a lot of time trying to find one. Next slide. So then we pass on to the Caballito peso, which is made from 1910 to 1914. The designer was French. It was Charles Pilot. It's considered one of the most beautiful designs in Mexican coinage history. 1910 is the most available, but if you want to cherry pick, try to find the 1911 with the short lower left ray from a leftover 1910 die. And most dealers or sellers aren't street smart enough to know that that variety exists and you can pick up a bargain. And this is the last peso of this weight of silver, because there was another revolution that started in 1914 that devaluated the peso, which is an ongoing trend that sometimes, if there's luck, stabilizes. There's a reference book called Un Peso Cabalito by Utah Allen Shine. It's an absolutely outstanding book. If you're going to buy one or more of these Cabalito pesos, buy his book. And here's some images of a Cabalito peso. You see, Liberty riding on the horse. On the left side, you can see the short ray at the about 8 o'clock, just above the earth that the horse is standing on. 1911, you can see it's a longer ray, which is the common variety. The one you want to try to find is the short ray. Next slide. We start talking about this next revolution. It was really bad. About 10% of the people of Mexico perished during this revolution. The United States did have involvement. It was the last time that Mexico was invaded by the United States, because Pancho Villa was causing problems south of the Arizona and New Mexico border for us. We're to pay the armies, especially the remote ones. A series of revolutionary coins were issued in silver, and the most common are silver 1 and 2 pesos, and surprisingly, some have a little amount of gold in them. So the soldiers felt like they got the full value of their money, because as it was depreciating, they wouldn't accept a coin without enough monetary value. And then some are very crudely minted with cast planchets because of lack of equipment. Next coin. So this coin is from Chihuahua in northern Mexico. It was dated 1915. It's hard to see on the right side, but it basically says the Army of the North. It's back to that classic cap and raise design. Next slide. This one was made under Zapata, and you can see on the right hand image that talks about it being made out of partially gold, and you can only see the 0.5, and then the 9.5 is pretty much washed out, but it promised it had 0.595 grams of gold. When I purchased this at auction, the belief was it was an XF coin, and now resides, even with the cracked cast planchet, it resides in a Mint State 62 holder. It's a fun coin to own. I own several of these. I had them checked on mass spectrometers. A lot of them don't have the promised weight of gold. Somebody cheated. But if you're a soldier, if it looked like money, talked like money, acted like money, it was money. This next bronze piece is also a revolutionary piece. It's a key date of the 1 centavo series. was a 1-year size, 1915. Only made at Mexico City, where you can see the mint mark at the bottom of the right picture. Next slide. And then when the centennial of Mexican independence came up, they inspired themselves to come up with this very, very beautiful 2 peso coin. The Winning Liberty on the left is also immortalized on a statue in downtown Mexico City between the Zona Rosa and the American Embassy and the Sheraton Hotel. I was very privileged to stay at that Sheraton several times, and the privilege to look at that statue several times a day. And again, we've got some pretty standard symbols on the obverse of the coin, which is our famous eagle with the serpent. Next. By the end of World War II, the 2 peso coin became a 5 peso coin on this slide. And it's, according to the back of it, it's still 90% silver. However, this is not going to last very long, but this is one of the famous designs. It's pretty easy to get. Just be patient. You can probably get a good one for $50 to $60 in this type of condition on a good day. Next. Okay, by 1950, on the left side of the left picture, it says it's only 0.72 or 72% silver. We're at 5 pesos again. This is a key type coin because it celebrates the centennial of the first railroad in Mexico. And it's real popular with people that collect coins, tokens, and medals with railroad images. Next slide. Now we're going to start talking about Mexico gold. They were produced in much lower numbers than silver, basically because there were very few gold deposits in Mexico. Most of the gold was obtained by refining during the silver refining process and not left in the silver because it was valuable. And then gold was denominated differently than the real silver coinage. It was denominated in escudos, which is Spanish for shield. 1 escudo is equivalent of $2 or 16 real. And they were made in that denomination as late as 1873. They followed the same cycle what we went through with silver, from a good round coin to a crude cob, and then back to milled coinage in the 1700s. The early gold coinage is available. It's very expensive, particularly if it's not sea salvaged. And while we're on sea salvage, I prefer not to put any of that in my collection, although you might choose to. I try to stay away from something you buy directly from Mel Fisher, because he overly markets his stuff, and in my personal opinion, overcharges for what he sells. Now, that's what he needs to do to pay his bills, and I understand completely. Next. This is a coin that you probably want to get. It's a 8 escudo coin. You see 8 and S on the right-hand slide. You can get a pretty decent one of these for milk plus about $300. They're beautiful. You will find them a little bit hard to find. Try to look for something that's struck up a little better than this coin. You can see some weaknesses in the middle of the shield and on His Majesty's collar area. Next slide. One of my specialties and favorites is the early Republic Haptic Scoodle. They're probably the most affordable of the gold coins of the early Republic. You can't aspire yourself to get a half, 1, 2, 4, and 8 collection. It takes a little bit of effort, especially to find a fork scoodle that's not been doctored. One of the dealers from Guadalajara, when I upgraded a damaged fork scoodle, told me in over 30 years he's only handled 3 or 4 fork scoodle coins of this period that were not damaged in some way or quaint. So for me, I started collecting these during the last recession because gold was expensive. These have just, these Haptic scoodles have just under a 1/20 of an ounce of gold. I learned fairly quickly you can cherry pick some really good ones, and we'll discuss that soon. Next slide. This is the 8 scoodle gold coin that's in my collection. Beautiful coin. It's got nice fields. That's what you want to try to look for. Plus, you also have good detail on the serpent that's being bitten by the eagle, and the Book of Law is, you can see the detail in the Book of Law almost fully. These designs were called hand-on-book gold coinage because you have a hand pointing at a Book of Law. It says at the top, basically, liberty with law. You have High Greek and cap, which symbolizes a freed slave, which is kind of how Mexico felt immediately after they won their independence in 1821, just like we did on some of the early United States coinage. Next slide. So this is one of my favorites in the Haptic Scoodle series. And if you look at the coin image on the left, you can see in the legends that this particular die, which I've only found used 1 year without any redating, because a lot of these Haptic Scoodle coins being made in a few hundreds or maybe a couple thousand, got recycled with redating for sometimes up to 3 decades. This one's really exciting because it's from Guadalajara, dated 1840. There are 2 in existence. This one's a mint state 62, which is the finest of the 2 known. I know who has the other one. The widow of this person that bought it from an early Chicago Coin Club member found it in an ashtray where the gentleman was keeping his thought to be counterfeit coins. Thank God it got saved. It's excessively rare. It's pretty well struck from something from Guadalajara, which is a pretty remote and primitive area at the time. Next slide. There is a gold encyclopedia for all of this early Republic gold, written by Richard A. Long, who inspired this PowerPoint presentation from my handwritten notes. It gives as much detail as he was able to collect over a nearly 60-year specialty career in Mexican coins. He provides price trends and rough rarities for each date and things to look out for. The belief is that some of the dates and mints made as few as 50. Usually when they show up like the Guadalajara piece, A lot of times they made exactly 13 because one of the Mexican wedding traditions is that the future husband puts 13 coins in the bride's hand. And if it's possible, because the family has enough wealth, they try to do it in gold. A half escudo would be the easiest way to do it. A half escudo at the time in Mexico would represent a couple of days' pay for a common working person. The half escudos that you saw earlier, one of the old timers in the Mexican numismatic hobby said they're 1/3 scarce to rare, 1/3 very rare, and 1/3 good luck if you ever see one. And for the last 1/3, good luck if you ever have the opportunity to buy one. Basically, on those, you just make sure your checkbook's ready and you don't flinch too much when you have to write the check. The half escudo was much more counterfeited than the larger denominations. About 20% of the ones I now have in my collection are contemporary counterfeits. They range from being brass with some gold leaf to hide the fact and being very underweight to actually having good gold. Two of the coins, PCGS believes are genuine and they're in holders. But when I had the gold content checked on a spectrometer, they had about 12 carats of gold instead of the promised 21 carats. So whoever made them did a good job fooling the public. Next slide. This is a famous bullion type coin, the 50 pesos. It's a beautiful design similar to the 1921 2 pesos. If you're going to buy one of these, try not to buy the 1947 because that was a bullion coin that they produced all the way up until 1959, and it's real common. The earlier dates are not so common. Next slide. This is the Azteca peso. You want to try to get one of these made in the 1920s, 1959, because again, the 1959 was a long-term bullion coin. Why is it called Azteca? On the right picture, you see the Aztec calendar stone. And this was made to commemorate the fact that when they were doing excavation work around the ancient Mayan palace in Mexico City, they found this big calendar stone, which is a huge shock. But apparently, the early Spanish looted the calendar stone and buried it to try to, as part of their subjugation of the natives that celebrated the Mayan religion. Next. So that's it. I'll say, do you have any questions? And thank you.
Alrighty, we do have some questions in the Q&A. So I will go ahead and read some of them off. Let's see, which coins and particular mints from Mexico circulated most widely in the colonies and early US?
I would have to say in the early United States, a lot of it came from Mexico City, especially until the first Mexican Revolution in 1821. Quite a bit of stuff came out of Mexico from the various mints that were in operation when the United States invaded Mexico and seized Mexico City and occupied it. The belief is quite a number of those high condition coins, like that 1840 Guadalajara, were war souvenirs that people brought home to show people what the Mexicans were using.
Okay.
And then
go ahead.
The 8 escudos coin, or the 8 reales coin, particularly after 1857, when they were no longer considered legal tender in the United States. A lot of them would show up in New Orleans or San Francisco and promptly be melted to make United States coins, because you had to have United States dollars to pay import duties at the customs house. But we do see, from what I see in the Happix, for instance, an awful lot of those ended up in California, a small change before the San Francisco Mint was done in 1854, because that's where a lot of the eBay sellers find them.
Mm. Okay, did pillar dollars circulate widely in the US colonies?
Yes, it was the most common form of dollar coin in the US colonies, by far. And it was the most common dollar-sized coin in circulation in most of the country until 1857 as legal tender. And depending on how remote an area it was in the United States, it kept right on going for longer than that.
Okay, and we have one more question currently in the Q&A. If anyone else has any more questions, go ahead and send them in quickly, and we will get to them as well. But the last one that's currently here, how much do Azteca 20 pesos generally cost?
Okay, that's a good question. Last I looked, you can get a pretty decent AU for $700 or $800. The one I have in my collection is tied for finest known for the whole series. It's Mint State 64. Yeah, my recollection is at the ANA Spring Show in 2016 or 17 in Texas, I paid roughly $2,000 for it, which is a bargain compared to American, that's that rare.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Okay, it looks like those are all of the questions we have. So do you have any closing remarks that you would like to add before we wrap it up?
No, other than Mr. Newman gave the numismatic world a great gift. It's impossible to thank him enough.
Mm.
And I really appreciate being offered an hour to help numismatists that probably have an advanced case of cabin fever at the moment.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to present. And thank you everyone for watching. If you would like to tune into the next presentation, we have got Doug Davis talking about some counterfeiting up next. So that one should be open if you want to go ahead and join before he gets started. But I believe that wraps us up here. So thank you again, Brett, and hope to see you all another time or two throughout the afternoon.
Yep.
Bye.